me, I think probably the most important aspect is the importance of doing the right thing by the community that we serve. So listening to the views of the stakeholders, listening to the feedback, things that are working well, things that they need more of or different.
It's a very challenging time for people, and you've got to be an even better listener than normal. My mum always said we're born with 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason, and I think we have to listen in that kind of proportion.
Leadership in 2020 relies on the culture, the tone that you developed in 2019. So actually, even though we're all focused on today, today's culture is a direct result of what happened yesterday.
I think in the time of COVID, it's brought out people's character, and that's the best of people and the worst of people. So it's really underlined our principle in terms of recruiting based on our values, because they create behaviours.
I think what I've realised also in terms of leadership within our trust is how incredibly resilient our leaders are, but how important it is that we look after them, and how it's important for me to lead by example as the CEO, but also for them to do that on behalf of their teams.
When something of this magnitude hits, a lot of people that like to be empowered are looking upwards for a really strong steer. And I've learned personally that actually there's a right time to blend your leadership styles. And I've learned quite a lot about stepping up and being the steer, where previously we've done a lot of collective leadership. And I think that's one of my biggest lessons.
For me, leadership has always been about caring about people and about kindness through leadership, and it's a bit about being agile to find new ways to look after your people, your children, your families, and the communities that we serve. Ultimately, I think the value of network comes back to the collaboration, and ultimately it's around the collective commitment. Working together for the public benefit is been really humbling.
We're all dealing with the same guidance. We've done this little bit, and there's been much more of a collective community, I think, that's been driven across different regions.
For me, what I've really seen is what can be gained when there's less competition out there, but more collaboration between trusts and schools.
From my perspective, the different sectors is really great because it's a different perspective, yet shared experience, and that's incredibly important.
Really learning from the NHS sector about managing risk and supporting our colleagues, refreshing our people strategy has been really useful to see what other sectors are doing.
Having sort of regular meetings when you are personally being held to account for something that you've not come across ever in your career before, that is a difficult thing, and therefore being able to talk to other people who are equally being held to account was just essential, absolutely essential for me.
Like having that person who's walked a mile in your shoes, they really understand it, so that understanding and having that ear, I think is incredibly important.
The strength you get from having informal and formal networks really does make the job easier when it could be very, very lonely.
I think at a very strategic level, it is refocusing on the vision and core purpose of the trust and starting to think longer term again. It's been a relatively reactive few months.
I think the other thing that we've spent a lot of time doing, particularly in this last week, is ensuring that we've clarified our vision and made sure that it's out there with our team and that we've got that full team engagement and that everyone's following the map. And in terms of clarification of vision, I think it's incredibly important to keep that vision very, very simple.
As an organisation, we, like all others, had a strategy, and that was a 5-year strategy, and we have had to now and are starting to think, how do we adapt and change our strategy based on all that we've learned in the last 12 weeks, because everything has changed.
Wellbeing is absolutely mission critical to getting the next 6 months, year and beyond absolutely right. So that's something that I'm excited about refocusing on.
I think one of the things that we're really looking forward to is getting our children back into our academies and becoming that sense of community. And we're not talking about recovery and we're not talking about catch up, we're talking about connection. Because I think a lot of our families and pupils have lost the connection to learn, the connection to each other.
deepening the connections to those who we serve has never been more important, and ensuring our children and staff return safely to our academies and that their well-being is supported and managed very, very well, which means we revisit the trust people strategy. What we stand for, what we want for our people, what our people want from us as an employer has never been more important. So they're kind of the biggest priorities in the next few months. I think we've had a good opportunity, the education system in its entirety, to revisit, reset and reevaluate what's important and what isn't.
We have a real opportunity now, given the enhanced focus on health inequalities, the enhanced focus on detrimental health outcomes for people from BME communities. We've got a real opportunity to do something different. Whilst there is this focus, we must take the opportunity to make some lasting actions that will have a lasting output and start to change people's lives for the better.
I think there's been an increased level of altruism and kindness, which I think has been really gratifying. As I said, not just in my business, but in society in general. So that gives me great optimism, a bright, beautiful, human to human future.
I'm really hoping that we can try to develop a fairer society, particularly with George Floyd, as happened during the lockdown for us, but also looking at some of our homeless people, who are on the streets, who have all been housed in hotels like this happened. So as a society, I would want to look at how can we make it fairer. I do worry sometimes, though, that we want to race to return to normality, and I'm not sure that the normal we had was anything we would want to race back to be. And I think there's a really good opportunity for us to stop and to rethink and actually use our experience for good.
There has been a huge focus on the reconnection or a rediscovery curriculum, reconnecting children back into school, with schools having that additional eye on that element and focus on it. Then perhaps again that can bring about some bigger change in terms of what's important and how schools' curriculums are structured moving forwards, and we can see some real benefit for all children from that.
I'm optimistic that the system will continue to nurture that collaborative spirit and new working practices that have been developed in the last 4 months of people from different sectors coming to work together, trusts, different sectors outside of education, to make a greater difference to the communities we serve, and really optimistic about the future and what we can create.